Now we're going to cover Chapter 6, Family, Friends, and Other Informal Supports. The learning objectives for this chapter include expressing the difference between family and informal supports and formal supports, analyzing the importance of informal support for the well-being of elders, describing the variety of family and informal supports, discussing the importance of sexuality, intimacy, and emotional attachment, and examining the different types of family support. Social support includes receiving informational, emotional, or instrumental assistance from your social networks. As we age, we may require more formal support, such as doctors, nurses, or other healthcare workers that we pay for, but we still need informal support from family, friends, neighbors, and our communities that is unpaid. There are many benefits of social supports. There are misperceptions that older adults who appear isolated may be lonely and suffer from loneliness, but a lot of these older adults have informal networks that provide support. And then strong social supports improve health status, increase self-confidence, reduce risk of disability and death, increase feelings of control and autonomy, and improve cognitive abilities. So do social supports change as we age? While older adults may experience a decline in friendship and other informal relationships as they age, many of them see a change in the composition more than a decline. While they may have less frequency of contact with friends, they may increase their contact with family members as they age. And with this, we see what we call reciprocal exchanges. This is similar to the social exchange theory discussed in Chapter 5. Older adults often maintain reciprocal exchanges, or helping others who help them, being able to give and take with others. For example, a grandparent living with their adult child who supports them financially may reciprocate by providing free childcare. When older adults take on these meaningful roles of helping others, they see benefits such as self-esteem, sense of purpose, life satisfaction, and improved well-being. While the majority of older adults do not live alone, some do. The number of older adults living alone is anywhere from 26 to 29%, with more women living alone compared to men. However, just because they are living alone, it does not mean they do not have informal support systems. They are not necessarily socially isolated or lonely, although gender may play a role in that feeling. As you can see in the second chart, men living alone report less satisfaction with friendships than women living alone do. However, loneliness is a problem with many older adults. Just over 35% of older adults aged over 45 report feeling lonely, and this social isolation is associated with poor health and even higher rates of death. So what factors affect social relationships in older adulthood? Being engaged with social relationships can affect a person's physical and mental health, and conversely, a person's physical and mental health can affect their ability to engage in relationships. That means there may be a process of social selection occurring. Social selection means that healthy people may be more likely to have relationships because they are healthy rather than the other way around. Informal social support needs may be affected by gender, race, social class, and other factors. For example, women tend to live longer than men and therefore become widowed. This may mean they require more social support in later life. The family is often the older adult's most important source of informal support. 94% of older adults have family members and 80% have children. Many even live in households with other family members. However, many older adults report that they do not want to live with their children because they do not want to be a burden. Families are changing. For example, family structures, what we consider family does not always mean related by blood or marriage anymore. There's more variation with LGBTQ families, civil unions, and other arrangements. There's also this idea of fictive kin, providing care as though they are family, even if not related by blood. We see this a lot in families of color. They often consider people that are not related to them by blood as their relatives. They have a big use of godparents, and they consider friends as family as well. We also see the growth of the multi-generational family. The definition of a multi-generational family means at least 2 adult generations and 1 other generation in the same household. We see that African American, Asian American, and Latina older adults live with family members more than their white counterparts. And these larger extended families include more support from kin networks where support flows in both directions. Grandparents and older adults in these multi-generational households typically provide care, support, and mentoring to the youngest generation in that household. We also see what we call skipped generation households, where the parent is not in the household. So often this is when a grandparent is raising the grandchild alone as if they are their own child. And there is a video on this week's speech board about a grandparent raising their grandchildren that provides a little bit more context to what the situation could look like. You'll see in the graphs on this slide how multi-generational households are more prevalent in certain ethnic groups, but also how the percentage of households in the United States that are multi-generational are growing in recent years. So we've seen a growth in these multi-generational households. So we have to also look at how older partners are providers of social support in older age. So we have about 20% of older adults who are childless, and so they might rely on their partners for social support more. These childless older adults are often, they have smaller social networks and less support. However, they often have a higher income and savings due to not having children. We also see this group of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender partners in older adults as well. These were generally seen as an invisible part of society, as these relationships were not openly accepted in the past. However, as our perceptions change and same-sex marriage is more common, more older adults are coming out as LGBTQ. And we still know very little about this group. Surveys indicate approximately 2 to 5% of older adults identify as LGBTQ, although again, this information might be more than we know just because people may not be comfortable coming out because of the history of LGBTQ rights during their younger years. These older adults are often childless, and they create social networks of choice, including those they consider to be their surrogate family. They also deal with what they consider a double stigma. They're dealing with aging and sexual orientation at the same time. So often they came out later after starting families and having children, and they may face more backlash from that. And they also grew up in a time in history when discrimination was harsh or even deadly. And so they have to often deal with these unique health situations that are not conducive to non-marriage relationships. For example, if their partner is in the hospital with a very severe illness or situation, often they have a hard time getting into the hospital room because they are not married legally. And so sometimes people have passed and their partner could not even be there with them literally on their deathbed because they were not married. So these are just a few of the things that LGBTQ older adults are facing. Now I skipped this slide, so I'm going to go back to it. So looking at spousal support or partner support in older age. For older adults, romantic partners or spouses are most likely to serve as confidants, close friends, offer emotional support, and really just guard against loneliness. Older adults who are married or in a committed relationship, including LGBTQ couples, see benefits such as lower mortality, better physical and mental health, greater life satisfaction, and higher functional ability. And what we see sometimes with these older adults is what we call the empty nest, and this is when children move out. Sometimes this can cause, challenges for older adults as they move into new roles, no longer serving a primary role as a parent figure, but it also gives them more time together as a couple to engage in activities that they enjoy, find more time to just spend together and kind of redefine their relationship. We also see divorce in old age. People do not stop getting divorced when they get older. So we are seeing these kind of rates of divorce in older age increase as baby boomers move into older age and maybe see that aging, divorce is more acceptable in our society than it was in prior times. So they are taking advantage of choosing what makes them happy as divorce becomes more acceptable. We also have a very small group of never married older people. This is about 4% of older adults. However, we may see growth in this category as younger generations choose not to marry. Often these older adults have reciprocal relationships with kin, neighbors, and friends to reduce loneliness and isolation. And they often see greater social and economic resilience due to lifelong employment and diverse social networks. So what we know about older adults and sexuality is that older adults are interested in sexuality. I liked this quote from your book. Despite the stereotypes and bad jokes, intimacy is alive and well in our aging population, and it is time to get comfortable with it. The details may change with age, but our basic physical and psychosocial needs do not. So it's important to realize that older adults desire sexuality, and providing a safe space for that, taking into consideration any cognitive impairments, is important. Finally, we'll talk about some other types of family support. So older adults have a variety of relationships with their adult children. After spouses and partners, older adults see their adult children as the most important source of informal support and social interaction. These are cross-generational relationships, and while geographic separation is more common now, older adults and their adult children can still have meaningful relationships with the help of technology. And as older adults get older, they are more likely to move in with their adult children, and within that, they more often move in with daughters. Additionally, sibling relationships are really important. These relationships are really unique because they can actually have the longest duration of any relationship for a person. And siblings can have a deep connection because of their similar history. These relationships usually have the primary purpose of providing emotional support to one another. And those that have good quality relationships with siblings have higher life satisfaction and lower rates of depression in older age. Older adults are getting to experience the role of grandparent at increasing rates due to the length in life expectancy. Some can be grandparents for up to 40 years. Most grandparents are employed, engaged in their communities, and sharing resources with their grandchildren. Just like we discussed with role theory in Chapter 5, becoming a grandparent can give them a new role and sense of identity, and these roles often differ based on race and ethnicity, with non-Caucasian grandparents taking on bigger roles in their grandchildren's lives. And 80% of grandparents report seeing their grandchildren monthly, so they have a lot of involvement in their day-to-day life. Okay, finally, a summary of the chapter. So informal support networks are vital to older adults' physical and mental well-being, with family being the most important. There's a wide variation of family forms that provide support, including grandparents, LGBTQ partners, fictive kin, and others. Multi-generational families are growing in the U.S. in recent years. There's an importance of considering the whole family, not just the older adult. Older adults still enjoy romantic relationships and intimacy. And siblings, adult children, and other family members are important to older adults' well-being as they age.